Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo. With your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another week, another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you, as always, for checking us out, whether you're listening to this audio podcast form, whether you're watching this on the YouTube video side. We appreciate y'all very much. Today is Monday. It is a new week, which means, as usual now, I am joined by my guy from New York City, Joe from Queens. What's going on, dude? How you doing?
Doing all right, man. I'm living the dream. It's rainy. My wife just got back. Yeah, my wife just got back from a bachelorette party, so I solo parented this weekend. It was fine. No injuries or anything like that, but I survived. I'm a little tired.
First time, too. First solo parenting exodus for you, man?
But yeah, basically. I mean, since my wife went back from maternity leave, she went back to the office. So for about 4 months there, I was watching him because I didn't have a job, unfortunately, at that point. So I was watching him primarily from like 7 a.m. till 5. So I'm kind of used to being just me and him. Yeah. But obviously, it was a little bit different because he started eating solids. And that's usually I don't feed him. Usually my wife does for most of the time. So I had to like adjust to that. And that's kind of nerve wracking because it's like he's eating regular food now, and he has no teeth basically, except like a pinky that's coming out of his gum. Yeah. You know, that looks like a tooth. But other than that, what about you? You had a fun weekend.
I did. It is well dependent, I guess, whether if you're listening to this or watching it. So anytime on Monday, my birthday. Another trip around the sun, man. I tell you what, I did have Saturday, I had an outstanding time. Instead of going out somewhere and kind of celebrating, my wife wanted to have friends over, which I was a little bit suspicious of at the time. And I'm like, yeah, man, I'll do that. I could see the point. Not want to go out and, get shit-faced and have to worry about Ubers and all that other stuff. So I had some friends come over. And what I did not know was that two of my really close friends, Tony and Kristen, who live in Dallas, came in and surprised me and showed up. Awesome. And it is awesome. And I got to my wife kind of put that together, and I got to give her some credit. And this is kind of going to be a backhanded compliment towards her because I love my wife, man, and she is good at many, many, many things in this world. But one thing she is not real good at is keeping a secret. Mm-hmm. And turns out that like all my other friends knew that Tony and Kristen were coming, but I didn't. And she managed to keep that from me. And I would have bet my life that at some point she would have said, listen, honey, I got to tell you something. Don't tell anybody. Promise me you won't say nothing. Act like you're completely surprised, but I just want you to be prepared that Tony and Kristen are actually coming in from Dallas. I can't believe that she didn't do that. And I was in my kitchen prepping like some shredded chicken I was going to make before people came over, and they came walking in the house, and I was just completely stunned. But anyway, yeah, man, family, friends, my kids were both there. Good time, man. Good time. Cool. I'm feeling old. I'm not going to lie. I am.
We all are, man. We all are. But happy birthday. I'd sing you happy birthday, but I don't feel like it.
No, I don't need you to sing me happy birthday. It's funny too, because you look at guys that like Tim Graham, who we're going to talk about in just a minute, by the way, but like Tim and like say Sal, and people they've been around for so long, and just people associate them as kind of being old, compared to a lot of the younger people in this game. And I look at him, I'm like, damn, dude, I'm actually like I think I'm a year older than Tim actually. And I'm like 2 years older than Sal. So
yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but you look pretty good for your age. It's mostly because you dress like a bro. I mean, I'm right now. I'm dressed like a frat bro as well, kind of with the hoodie. But you always
I do. If you're on the video side, I like the Hitman Hard hoodie though. That's pretty dope.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's pretty rad. I dig it. That's the beauty about when you don't tell this to my wife. She's over there. But when you get married, you can start dressing like, you know what? I'm just gonna wear wrestling hoodies. I don't care anymore. Like, who cares? Wrestling hoodies rule. I got a few. I'm getting a death stare from her right now. She's looking at me. This is a beautiful hoodie. It's beautiful. I love it. Wow.
It is.
Okay. Anyways,
it
This is nice. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. Anyways, but
anyway, yeah, it's a nice hoodie, but yeah, I did. I had a good time. I do still kind of dress younger than I am. Well, not so much today. Just got a regular basic hoodie on. But anyway, I appreciate enough about me and my birthday. There's a lot of stuff that I want to get to today. In a few minutes, we're going to talk about the Bills wide receiver room. And, we talk about the unit. Is it good? Is it stink? And this and that. And people always say, well, what's it compared to? Like last year when the Bills offense seemed to be struggling, and you would talk about that. It seemed like people would point out, well, every metric says they're good compared to their peers. So what I did is kind of put a chart together of the top 4 receivers for all 32 teams in the league and kind of tiered them. I power ranked them, but also put them in, I think it's like 5 different tiers. So we're going to bring that up in a few. We'll talk about that. I thought that you brought up a good point when we were talking earlier in the week about what do you think Bills fans are going to obsess over more? What Xavier Worthy does in Kansas City because the Bills could have had him and helped the Chiefs get him, or what Stephon Diggs does in Houston. We'll spend a few minutes talking about that. Also, Chase Claypool side with the Bills. Polarizing reactions from Bills Mafia on social media. Really extreme one way or the other. And we'll hit on that as well. I kind of want to roll right into this, though, with it. And I'm going to give you, you said you hate giving me credit, and I look young. I hate giving you credit for anything equally. So let's just be on the same page about that. And you came to me last week with I don't want to say you pitch because we kind of go over what we're going to talk about, at least, the main things on the show each week. And you came to me with a story that Tim Graham put out last week about the Pegulas and Laura getting a piece of the team. And at first I was just like, this doesn't move the needle for me. It's not interesting. It didn't really do anything for me. And then I read the story and I should have known better with somebody like Tim Graham that it was going to be a fascinating story. He does things that no one else really in this market does. And then he also has this Tim Graham and Friends podcast that he does with Jonah Bronstein. And I listened to that Friday night after work. And I think I sent you a message late Friday night on Facebook. I was like, yeah, I was wrong. This is some pretty interesting shit that Tim reported on and did a show on his podcast about. Let me set it up for you. I'll get some takes from you. But essentially, for people who might not know what I'm talking about right now, Tim reported in The Athletic that Kim Pegula, and this is actual big news, he reported that Kim Pegula has now been ruled legally incapacitated. Terry is now her guardian. The actual term, I can't remember. But basically, with a couple of limits, Terry is in full control and acts now on her behalf. They own the team 50-50. And he also reported and talked about on his show that the information about Kim, her health, was kind of a surprise to at least some employees who were kind of maybe holding out hope that she'd be, all right, and that she'd be eventually coming back to these teams. Tim mentioned info being really sparse. And then Laura Pegula, Terry's oldest from another marriage, is the designee with the Bills moving forward. Meaning if something were to happen to Terry before he can make like the transition, I mean, he is 73 years old. It's not out of the realm of possibility. Laura Pegula becomes that person. And also one other thing that he reported on the Sabres side here as I'm rambling, but this is important stuff that Tim covered on the show. Laura Pegula is an alternate governor of the Sabres. She's been repping the team at NHL meetings. And Tim talked about this being something that's not being reported by the team or the league. Like she's not in the office directory right now for the Buffalo Sabres. So I don't know. What I'm basically telling you is I think I undersold this story a little bit because I hate speculation and conspiracies, but there's a lot of meat on this bone that basically Tim talked about. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I pitched it to you because I was like, this is interesting, and you kind of were like, nah, I don't like it. But I'm glad. I feel like the Drake meme where like Drake is like in the red shirt, and I go, this is a good idea, and you're like, no. But then Tim Graham talks about it, you're like, yeah. I digress. But yeah, I think. Look, I'm fascinated by all that sort of stuff, but I think it's interesting that it's Laura because look, if you look at the time frame of since the Pegulas took over the both franchises, 2011 for the Sabres, 2014 for the Bills, the other children have been heavily I don't want to say involved, but they've been very visual. They've been involved with other ventures through the team. Like Matt Pegula designs hats. You got Jesse had a cosmetics line for like one season. I kind of remember that. She and Kelly also, they had the Healthy Scratch, which was downtown, that allegedly they ran, or whatever you want to believe. So it could have been an absentee gig, but they were very involved. Laura, you saw her for the pictures for the Bills when Terry bought them, when they had like everyone was out in the front and they had a helmet. She was there. Same with the Sabres. Then you never saw her again at all, and like she was gone, out of sight, out of mind. And now all of a sudden she's back, and like she laid it out pretty heavily, or Tim did, excuse me, about what her role is, it seems like. And the reason why I think it's interesting is that prior to Kim Pegula's, getting sick, she had a giant say in everything. Sure. You are naive to think she just came to work and was working on jerseys and that's it. She was involved with everything. Okay. Sure. And sports wise,
team president. Yeah.
Team president. Like, she was involved in those meetings, like looking at Josh Allen. She made the trip to look at him, and like, she was very much involved. And you can obviously criticize her involvement. There were a lot of decisions that were not good. And, it became they kind of became a laughing stock a little bit, if to be honest with you. And my whole thing is, like, with Laura, is she going to have that exact same power as Kim did? Because Terry runs it like, oh yeah, like he runs it as all of them they get their piece of the pie there. It's not like Ralph Wilson and Ralph Wilson's wife, who you never saw until Ralph died and she came in and was like, yeah, I'm selling the team and goodbye. And that was it. They are involved. And I think that to me is the most interesting dynamic of what happens. Terry's not a young guy anymore. He's 73.
Right.
And I don't know what's going to happen in terms of what happens after he passes away. And it's just crazy that it seemed obvious, like this came out of left field a little bit, just basing this off how she wasn't involved the first like 7-8 years of this franchise, or both franchise, of their ownership. And I think it's just fascinating to me. And this trickles down to everything, and not just like on the field, possibly. We're talking about like stadium improvements. We're talking about like uniforms, things like that. These are what like the presidents of those teams usually do in terms of the business, acumen of those franchises. And I'm just curious, and we have no idea. I don't know what she is like in terms of what she's like. They've been so quiet about this, as Tim alluded to, like, which doesn't make sense. Like, why? I mean, why don't you be a little transparent a little bit and say, oh yeah, she's taking some of it. Maybe get her out in the interview circle, and so we can like find out, like, does she even like football or anything like that? Like, we have no idea. They've like kind of just thrown like, there's nothing, there's no trickle down of anything. And he's, as I've complained on this podcast for the last 5 years, and that's not an exaggeration, he has not talked about the Bills since 2019. Like, like, that's a long time ago for Terry, and he doesn't talk about it. And it is a right for fans, to know what's going on with how this franchise is being run. We've talked about it, tax money going to stadiums, things like that. Like, you have a right to know, how this is going to work out, because I have no idea.
I was going to ask you that, because you used the word transparency, and that was one of, like I said, the many interesting things that Tim talked about on his show. And also Joan as well brought up, I thought he brought up a really good point. Maybe this would be less interesting if like Laura Pegula was the only kid, or, the only one around the team. Then maybe this would probably be less interesting. But I was going to ask you, and you already started answering. I'm like, do you feel, and Tim talked about this as well, that to some extent, at least, transparency from this ownership is owed to the fans of the Sabres and the Buffalo Bills? Now, maybe that's a little bit of a fine line, because when it comes to Kim Pegula's health, that's like a really thin line. Like, what do we have the right to know in terms of if she's going to live or die, or, what her medical condition is? I'm not sure that that's a fan's business per se from a health standpoint. So I can understand that fine line. But in terms of what's going on with the team, giving up pieces, selling percentages, and just the overall, how the organization, how the operation is being run, you kind of feel like more transparency is owed to the fans, don't you?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. Because we don't, And look, I'm not saying that like worst case, like what's the worst case? They sell the team. Like, okay, that's like, in case none of the kids want it. Who the heck knows? I don't know if they want it or not. They're kind of involved and they're kind of not. But they owe it. Yeah, look, you haven't talked in like 6 years. There have been so many stories that have happened since then. Like in the last 6 years, so the Bills, like the state, like nothing about the stadium has been talked about, or by them. Nothing about like how they fired a bunch of VPs or whatever, like Ron Ricouye and the two that were humping at the Sabres and the Bills, whatever. Like nothing. Like they've been so quiet. The only thing we have, and I know you don't like juice, but I'm gonna make it juicy. I don't care. I go back to when Jesse had her Players Tribune article. And in that article, if you read it, there are definitely kernels of truth of her being like, yeah, one day I want to kind of like, my mom always wanted me to run the team when she passed on or whatever. And there were bites in there and people said it on Twitter, even media, like, oh, she sounds like she wants to run this team one day. And then what happens? 3 months later, her husband gets canned. Okay, whatever you want to believe. I've heard from different sources that he got canned. And
Tim reported that too. Tim reported he got fired like 3 months after. I think it might have been 3 months after that article came out. So and he talked about how Terry raved about this guy at one time, and then like 3 months later ends up getting fired.
Yeah, and that to me is super weird. And I wonder, how does Jesse feel about it? I mean, can you imagine like, hey, I'm your husband's fired from the team? Like, I don't think she's happy about that, or I wouldn't be. I mean, like, and like, if my wife was fired from the team that we were both working at allegedly, and it's just, I find it very fascinating because I don't know like what's going to happen in terms of that. But I think the biggest thing is, as I said, it is like the day-to-day operations of what happens with Laura. Like in terms of, is she going to be the new Kim Pegula with having power? She's at the owners meeting. She's at the governor's meeting. She did a Q&A.
She's the alternate governor for the Sabres.
Yeah, she does. And Terry strikes me as someone who doesn't care. Terry, I think, just wants to watch for sports. He wants to hang out with the jocks, and that's it.
Tim talked about it on his show. And again, if it sounds like I'm being a stand for Tim Graham, well, I am, because I think he's the best in the business when it comes to reporting and writing and talking about these stories.
He's the only
but
one
he
that
said
does
at the NHL meetings, he said, how do I know Terry Pegula was sitting at the bar? I can't remember. Ron Ricouye, I think, or I don't remember who it is. Actually, no, it was Scott Radisek, the former Bills linebacker, who's the architect or something for the new stadium. He goes, well, how do I know that Terry Pegula was sitting at the bar? Because I was sitting 10 feet away from him. That was his source. He goes, that's how I know. So, she is absolutely involved in what's going on right now, man.
And that trickles down. Look, I don't want to like, the rumor around the campfire a long, long time ago was Bill Polian got fired because Ralph Wilson's daughter did not get along with him. And she was a scout. And that's the rumor of what broke the whole thing down. And I'm not saying that's going to happen here. Who the hell knows? But that's about, they are hands-on owners. Like they have been involved. And, they're not going to just go away and not go, oh yeah, I'm going to get, she owns like a little tiny piece or whatever it is now. Like, it's not, I don't think she's there now. And like, and look, maybe I don't want it to sound, I am making it sound a little nefarious. Hey, she's there. Maybe he was like, look, I need someone. Obviously Kim is, incapacitated. She's gone, whatever. Like, hey, he trusts her, I guess, more than the other kids, or who knows? Like, maybe he tried to get, like, again, that's where the transparency, and no one looks into this. Tim's the only guy that like looks into this. And it's,
he said it took a month. He was reporting and gathering facts and information about this whole ordeal, literally.
And like, how many other people were they? Probably not. They're probably sitting around waiting for to do a mock draft, or news people were just waiting to do, I don't know, like the best chicken wing in Buffalo contest. Who knows? But like these things are important, okay? Sure. And I think
it is important.
They are important, and like, it's the off season. You have time to do something, and find out why this is happening. And it's just. The frustration level for me is just, I think back to like a decade ago, and I think back at how when the Penn State scandal happened with Jerry Sandusky, and like people in the Buffalo News at that time, totally different cast now than it was then, were like, Terry needs to come out. He needs to speak about this. There were columns written about like, what does he know? Like, and I remember like around that time, Lindy Ruff got fired, and I remember Mike Harrington and Jerry Sullivan went down to the opening of Harbor Center, or it was like either the ceremony, like they were digging the shovel in and all that crap. And Terry was there, and they basically ambushed him. And they were like, "What's going on with Lindy Ruff? Why'd you fire him?" And Terry was like, "Oh, I don't know what's going on." Like, and I remember the PR person at the time was like yelling at them, going, "This is the time we do this." Like, and I thought to myself, this happened 10 years ago. There would be no way in hell, anyone would do anything like that now. Like we get constant like, hey, what's going on with like, then we got constant like, what's going on with Penn State or what's going on in Lindy Ruff. We don't get any of that now from anyone outside of Tim. And it's frustrating for me because I'm just like, what do you got? Like, and it's not just about the sports people, it's about the news people. Right. Like this is the Sabres and Bills are an institution. They are the biggest thing in that town by far. Okay. They stomp the shit out of everyone else in terms of popularity or just an institution. And it just feels like no one wants to say anything. No one wants to rock the boat. We can't, access journalism. We can't piss off the Pegulas because we won't get a good golf foursome at the freaking Boyko Classic of golf. Like it's just kind of like I get fired up about it because look, I did go to school for, might shock people, but I did go to school for like sports broadcasting, and I understand the nuances of journalism and asking hard questions, and it's like no one cares. They just do whatever the hell they want, and it's just kind of like this isn't like I don't need people to be down there every day and have a microphone at Terry's garage and be while he's freaking doing the lawn, like, hey, what's going on? But my God, it's been 5 years, and it's not like the thing is, it's not like he didn't talk before. He did talk. He didn't, he talked here and there. But now it's like he vanished. Like, why has he vanished? Like, why are they worried about him? Because before he talked for like the 7-8 years when he owned both teams, he did do scrums and he did do interviews one-on-one, but now he like doesn't do any of them. And it's odd to me. It's just like, it feels like they're hiding something there in a way, because, and then there are people who just, and look, there are fans who don't care. I get that. I obviously care. And there are reporters who don't want to rock that boat at all. But it's fascinating to me. I think it's interesting to see what happens with this in terms of is she going to be the new Kim Pegula? That's what my biggest question is.
Yeah. Look, man, generally speaking, I hate speculation and conspiracy theories and drama based on nothing but speculation. But there is potential here for some infighting. We don't know when we speculate because, again, there's zero transparency going on right now. And people like instantly I seen gravitate towards that HBO series Succession, and I see a lot of it on Twitter. Like it's set up for all that shit. Like, is this person Shiv and who's cousin Greg
Rowan or
and all this stuff going on right now. But I'll tell you too, one other thing about the show that Tim did recently with Joan, again, that I really, really liked a lot. Tim brought up a point, and I never had really thought about it before, too much at least, until now. Through all this, I think the biggest takeaway from this story and his podcast that he just had on is this. Other than McBean, which he kind of lucked into, McDermott and Brandon Bean together, that's been solid. That's been stable. But every single thing on the football and the Sabre side of things, whether it's on the field or ice, or whether it's off the field, management, the chief operating officers, stuff like that, everything's been unstable. Everything about this organization now has been completely unstable, with the exception, like I said, of McBean. And that is, the CEO is getting fired. There's a new guy now, and all this other stuff that's just been going on. It's been crazy, and we don't know anything about it. I don't know. Yeah. It's fascinating.
And I'll just say that. And I'll just say this: an instance where this did blow up was the Denver Broncos situation when Pat Bowen had he had dementia, and before he could, I guess, like have someone with a trust, there was a bunch of other. There was like 6 or 7 kids involved in that. And I don't know the nuances, so apologies. But it basically blew up, and they couldn't agree on who was going to take over the team, and they had to sell it to the Walton family. So that's look. I don't know if that's the case here. Who knows? But there's a story here, and Tim shouldn't be the only one that's digging around for this. And I hate promoting other people. No, I'm just kidding. But like, it shouldn't be just him. Like this is a big deal, in that town. And it definitely should be something that should be looked into because well, there's a lot at stake here, man. There's still that stadium's getting built. Overruns are happening. Allegedly, they want to sell 25% because Terry doesn't want to put in his own money or like whatever you want to call it. Like I know it is his money technically, but there's a lot going on right now with that team on the business side right now.
There is, and like I said, definitely a fascinating story and lots of layers to it, and I think more to come as well. Anyway, I'm going to take a real quick break and come back, and we're going to get into the Bills wide receivers and how they kind of rank and tier with their peers. So we'll be right back. Okay, back here. Joe from Queens spent some time talking about Tim Graham's excellent story and podcast. What the hell is going on with the Pegulas right now? I kind of want to transition into the Bills wide receiving unit right now. That seems to be the big topic of discussion of late. So here's what I did, Joe. I looked at wide receiver rooms for all teams around the league, all 32 teams, 1 through 4. Now, there's some teams that are like 5 or 6 legit deep that got guys that aren't even going to be on this list. I made rankings based on kind of like where that wide receiver room is right now, what their potential is. If I would trade like the Bills wide receiver, would I trade their room for that room? Kind of like a combo of all that. I'm going to put it up on the video side anyway, and we'll talk about at least some of these on the audio side as well. Let me slap that up there. So I took all 32 teams and I kind of, like I said, I slotted them into what was 5 different tiers. When it comes to the Buffalo Bills, I have them ranked in the 4th of 5 tiers. And the reason why I have tiers, Joe, is I don't think there's a big difference. For an example, 21 through 28. It sounds, if you rank something 21st and something else 28th, it sounds like there's a big difference between those two, but there's really not. So that's why I kind of got these in tiers. When it comes to the Bills, I got this wide receiver room 4th out of the 5 tiers. And of course, the top 4 right now, Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, and Mack Hollins. And I got them 25th out of 32 teams around the league. Audio side real quick, and I'm not going to go through all 32 of these. That's not really the point. But I do have 4 teams in the top tier, the first tier. I got Frisco with Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Juwan Jennings, and Ricky Purcell. I got Miami. I actually got them up at number 2 now. They already had Hill and Waddle and Berrios, and they had Odell Beckham Jr. more on him in a few. I got the Rams in the top 4 with Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, who was just absolutely unbelievable. So 1-2, bam. Then DeMarcus Robinson is really good too. And Houston is my other tier 1 team. Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, and Robert Woods. When you look at this, and again, you had no input in this. This was all me coming up with this charts and these. So these are my opinions, at least anyway, the rankings in the tiers. Again, I got Buffalo 25th in the 4th tier. What do you think?
That seems about right. I mean, I'm looking at where they're at. I mean, I think you could. Denver or Arizona are pretty close to the Buffalo because, like, I think they have
same tier. Better, that's what I'm saying.
They have a. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is better than who the Bills have right now.
But he might be by himself, but their other receivers are nothing.
Yeah, but they don't have they don't have. Yeah, it's not great, Bob. As the meme says, I just that's what they want right now, but it's bad. And I don't know how anyone could get excited about this wide receiving core.
Well, there's potential. There's potential.
There's potential, but like whatever. Like, okay, they have a second. They finally drafted a rookie, so yeah, that's the one guy. Like, okay,
there's upside with 3 of them. I think there's upside, Joe. 3 of the 4, I think there's legitimate upside. I think Curtis Samuel, who had a really good season in 2020 with Joe Brady, there's upside there. I think Khalil Shakir really came on at the end of the year, and there's potential and expectations with Keon Coleman, a highly drafted rookie. But I only got them 25th. I mean, that's 7 from the bottom because potential might be a part of it, but the production, the on-field production is lacking at this position. And there's not a lot of wide receiver rooms in the league where I would say, you call up Washington, we will swap our receiver room for yours. The Bills wouldn't be saying no to a lot of these teams, I feel like. Not like right now, at least anyway.
Yeah, they wouldn't be. The one thing I've noticed from looking at the list is that if you look at the top 5 teams, they all made the playoffs last year. And the Bengals would have made that. You have them at 7. They probably would have made it if Burrow was there. Like,
oh, they definitely would have been in playoff.
Yeah, team. They would have made it in, like, you look at the bottom part, you got New England, you got Pittsburgh, you got the Chargers, you got Atlanta, Washington, Arizona. I'll let you know when I get to a playoff team. Denver,
well,
and then
Pittsburgh,
you get
but barely.
Pittsburgh barely. Yeah, I forgot about them. But like you look at it, and there's not many.
If you go 21,
you need explosive players, man. Like, and that's usually near the top. And as we talked about,
I was going to say 20 through 32. I'm looking at the list right now. 20 through 32, the only teams that make the playoffs, Baltimore, at 23. And that's again, Pittsburgh barely.
And Baltimore at least had Odell Beckham last year. So
Baltimore, I feel like Baltimore though is kind of like the Bills in a way. Like they have they have the literal MVP quarterback in Lamar Jackson. They run the ball well, they protect the quarterback, and they don't have a great receiver. They kind of got a combination of receivers that can do some things, and they got a great tight end, Mark Andrews, who was hurt last year too, by the way.
Yeah,
but
Zay Flowers was really good as a rookie. I think if the Bills could get Coleman to be like that, that would be
absolutely
like slam dunk. Sign me up for that. But yeah, it's not great, and
this puts a lot on Josh Allen. Like Josh Allen has got to be great. Lamar Jackson was, but again, most of these teams near the bottom kind of correlates. If your receiving room sucks, your team's not going to be very good. That's kind of, again, these are just my opinions on where these are charted. Some people might completely disagree with a lot of it, and I'm sure I'll get some of that in the YouTube comments and in tweets and stuff. But I think this just puts a lot on Josh Allen. And I will say one other thing too, Joe. This does, to be fair, the Bills have a really good tight end right now in Dalton Kincaid, who could become one of the great tight ends in this league. And James Cook is definitely one of the better young running backs in this league who catches the ball out of the backfield pretty well. So, they got other Dawson Knox. They got weapons. It's not just receivers, but we're talking about receivers today. I'm just saying, don't at me, audience. Don't at me that the Bills got Kincaid. I'm not that dumb. I know they got Dalton Kincaid. I know they got James Cook. Today we're talking about receivers.
Yeah, and they still got to prove that they can have Dalton and Kincaid, Dawson Knox and Kincaid on the field at the same time to be effective. They did not prove that last year when they were together. One thing, you go back to Josh Allen, the pressure on him. I saw someone it was a content guy, put on like a thread of like wide receivers who have had career years under Josh Allen. And it was basically 4 guys. And the 4th guy was Robert Foster. And I was like, okay, well, he was there for like a cup of coffee and then he like left. And like, it's like, do we count like the other guys, like, that did not have career years here? Like Crowder wasn't good here. Hardy wasn't good here. Sherfield wasn't good here. There are a lot of wide receivers. They have tried, and I'm not faulting Josh at all. So send your hate tweets to Pat on that one too. But they've had wide receivers that have not like blossomed here, and that's the big thing. Look, I'm a guy who I like to think I respect the history of the game in terms of like knowing when guys leave and like you lose your number 1 wide receiver, because this does happen. Like they trade number one wide receivers get traded for all sorts of reasons. There are guys who keep going, like Tom Brady. Like they traded Randy Moss. He kept going. It didn't matter. Then you got guys like Ryan Tannehill. Like they traded AJ Brown. He went into the toilet. Adams, when he left Green Bay, Rodgers had he wasn't very good his last year there in Green Bay. If you want to go way back, I remember like Dante Culpepper was a guy who had Randy Moss, and he was a top 5 quarterback for like 5 years. Randy leaves, and they're like, Nate Burleson, you're going to be in charge. And I remember this because I had both Nate Burleson and Dante Culpepper on my fantasy team, and they were horrible together. And Culpepper ended up destroying his leg, and a lot of people will think like, well, that's why his career went downhill. I don't know about that, because I think him losing his number 1 wide receiver crushed him. And that's going to be the big thing that's coming up here with Josh Allen is how is he going to be when he doesn't have that number one wide receiver? He's going to have to make, I don't want to say chicken bleep, but he's going to into chicken salad. He's going to have to make chicken, I don't know, whatever is a bad chicken. McDonald's chicken, we'll just say, into chicken salad.
On the McDonald's slander, dude. I just had McDonald's like an hour ago.
Okay, well then Burger King chicken. I don't know. Okay, but it's going to be a big test for him because he hasn't had this really since his first 2 years, which sorry, but I wasn't that impressed with his first 2 years here. He was okay his second year. He was not great his first year at all. So now it's going to be a lot on him. Is he going to be that guy? Is he going to be Tom Brady, where Tom Brady made Chris Hogan and Danny Amendola like functional, or is he going to be like a quarterback who, man, you needed to have those number one guys around him, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens because again, there are guys that they have signed that kind of just fizzled out, here because he was so reliable on Diggs and Gabe Davis. Like I'm sure if you put the percentage of like targets. Especially last year, like the third wide receiver last year was what, Hardy? I don't even remember who I call it dad brain, but it's like who was the third wide receiver last year here?
It was
like
Shakir.
Shakir was. Oh yeah, you're right. I'm an idiot. Shakir was, but he did come on. My apologies. He did come on at the last 2-3 months. So my apologies. That was dumb. But like,
let me ask you a question. Are you you seem abnormally in like a good mood right now?
I took a nap.
I think so. Compared to normal, you're not as feisty. I want to see if I can make it a little bit feistier.
Oh God!
I want to do something here. I want to read. And usually I save these for like our mail pod bags or whatever the hell I want to call them. Sure. We do that every week. Somebody put a comment on YouTube, and I want to read it to you right now.
Oh God!
And kind of funny, but I also think, in fairness to you and to him, there's a couple good points. Let me read what this comment was. It was from, actually, I don't have the person who was from. I'd have to look it up, but I did copy the comment. I want to read it.
69, probably.
It says, here's what he said. And this was based off last week's show because we were talking about receiving rooms and 12 personnel and yada, yada, yada. He says this, and let me finish it before you react. Joe from Queens is living in the past. The NFL has evolved. It's not 2020 anymore. Most of the top offenses are leaning heavily into 12 personnel in today's game. Baltimore, Kansas City, Philly, and Green Bay. Joe compared our weapons to that of San Francisco, who also uses 12 and 13 personnel at a high clip. Kittle and McCaffrey are the centerpieces of that offense. Their wide receivers aren't small speedsters either. They are big-bodied guys that can block in the running game. I know you guys hate defense.
We do.
Well, what's up with plural there? But he says, I know you guys hate defense. But it's just a fact of the matter that with a quarterback who is as turnover prone as Josh Allen, the Bills need a top defense. Look at all the games that the Bills won solely because of that defense in the playoffs over the last 4 years. Fair points.
The Bills defense won games for them in the playoffs?
Sure. I mean, yeah.
Well, yeah, they beat the Steelers with their vaunted
they beat
offense.
the Ravens. They beat the Ravens that year where Teron had the 100-yard interception.
Yeah, so I'm living in 2020, then, but
well, he was talking about more and more teams are using two tight ends, and then he pointed out Frisco because we did say Frisco last week on the show, and they are led in large part by a great running back and a great tight end. That's
sure, but they also have two really good wide receivers. Look, I'm not as big of an anti-12 personnel as a lot of people, as some people on Twitter are. Like, it just last year they just didn't get Dawson Knox involved enough.
Nice stuff last year.
Yeah, he saw exactly. He wasn't. It didn't work out. So if they got some output out of those two guys at the same time, then yeah, you could be a little bit of a stickler on your wide receivers a little bit, but they didn't. Yeah. And so that's where I'm at. Like, hey, I would like them to do if they're. But with San Fran, yeah, they played 12 personnel, but they also have two really good wide receivers. And that's the way. Look, if they don't want to go 4 or 5 wide receiver set, I'll go fine. 12 personnel, like have both your tight ends like come out and like be in passing patterns, in terms of figuring it out. And they didn't do that last year. Now maybe this year you get all the cliches of we have another year here, or they know the system now, and all that sort of stuff. But they just need to have a semblance of an aerial attack. And look, if I've brought this example many times before. If they're like the 2013 Patriots with Aaron Hernandez and Gronk, where like they both had like I think like 150 catches between them, and that's Dawson Knox, and that's Kincaid. Sign me up, and then I'm fine with your wide receivers being your type A, BC guys or whatever you want to call it. But and I'll listen to that. But what I won't listen to is just the going more to a running oriented offense. I am not a fan of that. I don't think that wins in this league. I think that's what teams that are 10-7 are always in that range, and they want to just get by. That's what they do. And, you look at the draft, 15 offensive players were picked in the first 15 picks. None of them were running backs.
Right.
So what am I supposed to go into thinking well, hey, that's making a comeback because one year, the passing numbers were down, which in my estimation was because a lot of quarterbacks got hurt. And again, as a historian of the game, I'm old enough to remember when the zone blitz changed everything, and that lasted a couple seasons, and offenses figured it out.
Sure.
And this is how it always is. A defense there'll be a new scheme, offenses will figure it out, and they kind of go back to normal. So
I want to give a little bit of kind of like a spoiler alert into next week when we're on the show. A lot of people will point to the fact that the Bills, when Joe Brady took over, they won down the stretch, and they did it with Stephon Diggs not being a big part of the offense. What we're going to do next week on the show, next Monday show with you, is we're going to go through game by game the Bills after Joe Brady took over, and we will kind of we'll look at the stats. We'll see how much of that was because the offense just played better, they threw the ball better, or how much of that might have been either their opponent stunk or the defense won them the game. So that's going to be.
I'll even watch it. I'll go find it on YouTube. I'll even watch the first game, which I forgot who it was.
Okay, so we got about 15 minutes left here on today's show. I want to get to two more things. News wise, the signing itself shouldn't have been big news, but it certainly became big news quick. And I definitely overreacted at the time. I'm not going to lie about it on Twitter. In fact, it ended up in about a 4-hour Twitter hiatus for me. But anyway, the Bills signed Chase Claypool. And literally before I could get off my takes about how much I hated that signing and, where's Odell Beckham Jr., the guy who quite literally signed with the Miami Dolphins, maybe, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes later. The reactions, look, I hate the signing. Chase Claypool had a good rookie season with Pittsburgh. And I want to say something, too, about Chase Claypool real quick here. I was a big Chase Claypool fan. I am a lifelong, huge Notre Dame fan. I follow these guys in college, and I root for them for the most part, with a couple rare exceptions, extra hard in the NFL. I follow their careers much more closely. Probably besides, non-Buffalo Bills, I follow Notre Dame guys closer than anybody. This dude has a shitty attitude, or he's had a shitty attitude throughout his career. I remember that at Notre Dame being an issue. He is lazy. He's really talented. He's big. And he also is pretty fast. He's not like a big, slow guy. He actually, I think he had like a 4.42 or something like that at the 40 coming out. But he is got character issues. He is a lazy route runner. He is a lazy blocker. He doesn't pay attention to the small details and the nuances of routes. You go back to last year's division clinching moment where Taylor Rapp had that interception at the end of the game in Miami. It was Chase Claypool who ran this completely rounded route. And I remember some reporters talking about it, like the Miami Dolphins players didn't throw him under the bus. But that was on Chase Claypool, that last play. Anyway, there's just a lot of things to not like about him. And we're looking forward to maybe, June 1st, the Bills, maybe they go get Beckham. Maybe they go get MVS. There's a handful of guys who you feel like could at least help them. And they go get Chase Claypool. And I just think this dude stinks. And I don't get it. And I don't like it. And fans, of course, are being fans. They like anybody who signs with the Bills. Trust me when I tell you, dude, not a needle mover. Not a needle mover at all. I got to shut up because I will keep going on about Chase Claypool for
you got very. I thought you handled it fine on Twitter. You let people influence you way too much on Twitter. When you get
into the weeds.
When we get angry, Pat, you get influenced by people who are people who are established content bros who are like, you need to calm down, and then you calm down. No. Yeah, you could be emotional about it.
I left Twitter Friday for a couple hours. I said
3 hours. Yeah.
No more. And then I said, yeah.
I talk. So I'll use my who I talk to, but my ex roommate's a huge Steelers fan, and I texted him. I was like, "Hey, tell me about Chase Claypool. Like, what do you know about? Like, what do you follow him?" He's like, he had 2 really good years there, and then he just lost his mind, and that's like kind of what he made it out to be. Like, it seems like it's 90% mental with him. Then and there's a part of me that's like, man, maybe he just needs to get off of that, and he'll be fine. Because like, look, his rookie year, he cut 9 touchdowns. He did it with Ben Roethlisberger, who was was at the end of the line there. And next year he was okay as a second-year guy. He had at that point,
and they traded him.
Yeah, but that's the thing. He imploded. But because he imploded. It's all attitude. It seems like is his issue for the most part. As a player, he's a big target. They like big targets all of a sudden. That's the new thing they like. I can see. This is the lack of respect I have for their wide receivers from 4 to 6. Like, I could definitely, I could see him making the roster because of how bad it is 4 to 6. Like, look, if he has like the greatest training camp ever, or he plays really well, you telling me he can't knock out like the 4 and 5, like Mack, like Hollins is like there. Hollins has had 1 good year. The rest
Mack Hollins, yeah, he could be good. It's conceivable.
Then who's your 5th? Your 5th guy is Justin.
Right now, probably Justin Shorter.
Yeah,
for
a guy.
Now.
And hey, I'm sure there'll be people thinking he's Shakir 2.0 because.
Well, be careful though, Joe. We're going to talk about this in the future. Be careful because a year ago we would have made fun of Terrell Bernard being a starting middle linebacker.
You would have made fun of him.
Right, well, the Bills, Brandon Beane is an excellent track record, and they do like in the late rounds I'm talking about.
Sure.
And I mean, Justin Shorter was a 5th round pick a year ago, was hurt all last year. I'm not going to be dismissive of the potential for him to be something a lot more than what we're thinking he is here in April. You know what I'm saying? But you are right. Your point about Chase Claypool is spot on, because if I'm his agent and I'm like, what team can you go to where you could possibly start and maybe even make an impact? It's probably going to be the Buffalo Bills right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good situation for him. I think he's going to go to a team with Josh Allen, and, they got this emphasis on big wide receivers now all of a sudden.
Yep.
So it's there's a lot of hate towards him though, man. They're like, you just said it, like you followed him and
because we were expecting more. We were expecting more because we were expecting, fans were expecting the Bills to do something more significant after taking his on the video side. Baby here in the screenshot. I love that, man. I love it.
Yeah, my wife's been dying to do that for like the last 3 weeks. She's been dying to do that.
Next week, I'll tell you what. Next week in the intro, in the opening, have them on your lap, and you can.
Okay, I can have them on the lap in the intro for next week.
For a segment on the lap on next week's week's taping for sure. But anyway, that's what it is with Chase Claypool. He doesn't move the needle for me, and the fact that, people are like, oh, geez, a change of scenery, the light will click on. Well, guess what? Chicago gave up a 2nd round pick to get the guy, and they couldn't get rid of him fast enough. And then the Miami Dolphins had no interest in re-signing him this offseason.
But I can easily say, like Chicago did not have a great passing offense.
No.
They didn't. And Miami, you can say they have a complex offense. He went there mid-season, and I'm just saying some of this. It was so how many people hated him, and maybe it's I'll put it on me. Like I knew of him, I followed some of his games in Pittsburgh, and then like he kind of was out of sight, out of mind. But like there were a lot of heated people on there. Like I felt, and like it was a reaction to the reaction, because it was like I hate him, but he's just a camp body, and like I get the camp body stuff.
I hate that.
Yeah, but there's a part of me that thinks, like, a camp body to me is when you go somewhere that has enough depth there that there's no way you're making the team.
Yeah,
they do not have a lot of depth at wide receiver. They have a lot of unproven guys.
And I agreed. And Joe, I hate when these people will say camp body or no risk. Bullshit. Or there's nothing to lose.
Low risk, high reward. True. Yeah.
Every single rep that a guy who who this guy is, every rep he gets is a rep that Shavers or Shorter or somebody, that guy who got suspended for the year in Detroit for gambling, or rep. Yeah. So I mean, it's a rep that they're not getting. So look, I'll own it if I'm wrong. I'd like to be proven wrong. I'm fine with that, and I will own it. I just have no faith in them. Last point, then I want to get out of here. You brought this up to me earlier in the week. I think this is really interesting. The obsessiveness of I don't even just want to say Bills fans, because I'm sure 32 or 31 other teams probably have situations and scenarios where they're obsessive over certain things as well. But I'll ask you this. Who do you think Bills fans this year are going to be more obsessed over? Is it going to be Xavier Worthy and what he does with Kansas City? Because the Bills could have had him, and a lot of people are being like, not only did the Bills not take a guy, but they also helped Kansas City get him. So is it going to be Xavier Worthy, or is it going to be the ex-Buffalo Bill who got traded to the Houston Texans, Stephon Diggs? What do you think? Who do you think fans are going to hold on to and be a little more obsessive over?
Man, that is a tough one. I could just go what I will be obsessed over. It will probably be Diggs, because there is a part of me that I am not gotten over it. I'm still in like, what is it? Like denial, anger, denial, acceptance, whatever. Like I'm still in the denial part of everything right now. Like, and I feel, and because, we went, with Diggs, he was a fan favorite, whether, he's not now in terms of some circles, and I get why. But like we went with him and we saw how great he was, and they got rid of him when they had no one, when they shouldn't have, in terms of like, look at the roster, look what he's leaving behind. I mean, how big of a cancer is this guy? You know, to be honest, like that's where I'm at in terms of it. Now I know what the defense will be if he's doing well in Houston. It's going to be, well, he wanted out, so tough shit. Like it's gonna be like, let's fault him because he wanted to leave. Like Willis McGahee, he wanted to leave, or Marshawn Lynch wanted to leave. So it's on them. So don't worry. I do feel fans will be more. Oh man, it's so tough. I wish Diggs was going to a crappy team, because there's a part of me that wants to say, well, it's Kansas. Kansas City's the boogeyman. They're the boogeyman. They've been Michael Myers, killing the camp counselors or whatever the heck you want to call it for the Bills the last 3 of the last 4 years. And there is an obsession to see how they're doing. There's even an obsession to be like them, because that's like the excuse a lot of people want to make why we don't need wide receivers, because Kansas City didn't need to have wide receivers last year. So I think there is that obsession. But at the same time, I look at the Texans and I'm high on them. I think they're going to be really good this year. But I could definitely see, I think they're going to obsess more over Worthy. I really do, because I think because especially if he does poorly, then it's going to be like, oh, Brandon Beane got them. Like, it's like, see, all you people who panic, because that's going to happen. Like the Twitter bros will go like, remember when people were panicking about Worthy when he has, a 2-catch game or whatever the case may be, where at least with I think there will be more of a reaction to that, more so, because there was no excuse as to why you didn't get him. It's mostly there is no, he wanted out like Diggs did with that. So I think there'll be more of an obsession with most fans over Worthy, but it's close. And we do obsess. Look, Bills obsesses in a positive, negative way. As I said about guys who leave here. I remember when Tyrod left, and and there was a lot. I always remember I was watching him play against Cleveland. It was against the Jets, and it was in Baker when he got hurt. And I remember Bill's Twitter was like, it was a primetime game, and they were just drinking in the stench of Tyrod playing like crap in that game. And they were just loving life. And I was like, I had people adding me because I was a Tyrod stan. And I was like, okay, get a life, you losers. And I think they've always been obsessed with how other guys do elsewhere, especially offense. No one cares. I never saw anyone care about Tremaine Edmonds last year, really, on Bill's X. Did anyone care about him in Chicago? No one obsessed over him at all. But I feel like offensive players tend to do that a little bit more, because it's easier to cherry pick stats because you see highlights. They're not showing Tremaine Edmonds tackles or whatever. But it's close. I definitely think both are going to be obsessed, in terms of credit or disapproval of what Brandy B did with both of those guys.
They'll follow Xavier Worthy. They'll I don't know about obsession. They'll follow him closely. The obsession will be over Stephon Diggs. That's the dude who broke up with you, man. He broke up with you. He left you for another girl, and you did not, at this point anyway, really replace him. You took a rookie who 3 years from now might give you what Stephon Diggs did in different ways, but right now he didn't, and he's going to a team that probably on paper looks better than you right now, a team that you're going to have to get over at some point this season. They're playing them literally in Houston this year. So for me, it's Stephon.
Who gets more?
Go ahead.
Oh, you have who gets more? If one of those guys does well, who gets more of the blame? Like in terms of that, do you see Brandon Beane getting more blame for Worthy, or do you see him getting more blame for Diggs?
More blame for Worthy. I think everybody knows it got to a point with Stephon Diggs where it was just not a salvageable situation in terms of relationships, which again, that's a hole that I really don't want to go down right now tonight. But yeah, I think they might obsess more with Diggs, but I think if Worthy becomes great, it's going to be Beane will get more blame for Worthy, especially if Worthy is better as a pro than Keon Coleman is, then all bets are off. That's going to be something that he gets second guessed at big time, and deservedly so, if that's the way it works out. Anyway, I got to get out of here because long story short, in the interest of full disclosure, we're recording this about 7:30-ish, a little bit later. Home Depot's open at 8. Your boys got to go and get a new air conditioner for my wall. I have central air in my house, okay? I have 2 fans in my bedroom, and I still need a window air conditioner because for whatever reason, the central air works really good in the central part of the house, the living room, kitchen area, but the bedrooms, it doesn't really hit well. And maybe it's because I was also drunk last night and hungover this morning, but I was sweaty shit when I woke up this morning. I said, no, this ain't happening. So I got to get to Home Depot. I got about 20 minutes to get there and go find a $200 to $250 range, kind of like smallish air conditioner for my window. So
I wish you good luck in your air conditioner search.
All right. This was a good talk, though, man. A lot of good, interesting topics. Like I said, next week, we are going to go into the Bills offense under Joe Brady last year, kind of game by game. And we're going to really evaluate how much better it was, the offense, the receivers, the running game, all that stuff next week. Thanks, buddy. Good show.
Peace.
All right. I'll be back. Brand new episode. Anthony Marino, formerly of Buffalo Rumblings, will be joining me tomorrow. I'll talk to you guys then.